Tonight, the family of a missing Schwuzel man has been devastated by news of his untimely demise. The Chief Education Officer and the Director of the Department of Gender Relations explained the need to phase out corporal punishment, and the public has its say on the matter. And the opposition leader takes the government and SLASPA to task for what he says are foolhardy moves on the HIA redevelopment project. Those stories and much more coming up in the Hot 7 Nightly News.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovely and Amy Joseph.
Good evening. It is Wednesday, the 27th of February 2019. Welcome to the Hot 7 Nightly News on Flow Channel 117, Kiss FM 105.5 and 105.9, www.caribbeanhottv.com, and of course via our mobile app. I am Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. The family of a missing Schwuzel man has been devastated by news of his death. It was just yesterday, Tuesday, that the niece of Angelbert Joseph spoke to Hot 7 News, making an appeal for public assistance to locate her uncle. His dead body was discovered on a beach at Lattock on Wednesday. No one would have imagined that when Angelbert Joseph was taken to the mental wellness center last weekend, that it would be the last time that his family would see him alive. He had been hallucinating, and so his brother took him to the facility on Friday. By Sunday night, Lara, as he is affectionately known, was nowhere to be found. Felix Joseph is the brother of the deceased. He had been on a frantic search for his brother until the devastating news came on Wednesday.
I visited him Sunday afternoon, about 5 o'clock. He was cool and calm. He simply told me that the doctor said he's okay and he can go home. But I realized that he was saying certain things that was a little questionable. But I left him there in good spirit, and Monday morning at about 6 o'clock, my nephew called me and told me that he received a call from the wellness center that he was missing. In fact, he left. And from then on, I have been on the ball, going back and forth, trying to get the institution to work together so that we could look for him. As a matter of fact, they told me that he was disoriented when he left the hospital. So that gave me, I was a little bit concerned because of that. Because I said if he was disoriented, most likely he could be anywhere.
On Tuesday, our newsroom received a call from concerned niece Silai Valse to have the photo of Angelbert Joseph publicized in hopes of receiving information from the public concerning his whereabouts. Valse says on Wednesday, when the family received the call about the discovery of the dead body, it came as a shocking blow to the family.
Especially his mom, my grandmother. This was her baby, her last child, and she is really missing him, and I know that the family really has to try to help her go through this process because it's a big loss for her. So right now we're just trying to stick together as a family so that we don't have any other casualties from this casualty.
Valse says although her uncle had his challenges, he was well loved.
My uncle is a very jovial person. He's somebody that would give. Okay, sometimes he would go down to the village by the beach area, and if he's coming up with fish or sardines, he would share with his friends. Only this morning, a police officer was speaking about how he would take his akis to them at the police station. So he was a very giving person. He had his moments, but all in all, he was a very giving. He was a nice person, jovial. And it's unfortunate that he went through this mental illness because of alcohol abuse. But apart from that, he was a very nice person.
Emotions are running high. The family is mourning and they want answers relating to the death of their loved one. One of Joseph's nieces, Cecilia Joseph, says the family has not heard much from the mental wellness center, but she says they owe the family answers about how the situation played out over the weekend. The Ministry of Education is in fact moving ahead with a phasing out of corporal punishment in the national school system. The Chief Education Officer and the Director of the Department of Gender Relations are explaining why the move is a necessity and what systems and policies are in place to ensure that the education system is not adversely affected by the transition out of corporal punishment. The move to phase out corporal punishment is one meant to honor St. Lucia's commitments to protecting the rights of the child. Chief Education Officer Dr. Rufina Frederick says the ministry has a responsibility to fulfill its mandate as stipulated in the Convention on the Rights of the Child and St. Lucia's Education Act.
This move towards the abolition of corporal punishment is in keeping with our many conventions that we have signed with international agencies. For example, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, of which St. Lucia is a signatory of that. We have to ensure that we fulfill some of those mandates in terms of violence against children. We also are aware of target 16.2 of the 2013 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which provides an additional imperative for us to also move in the direction of the abolition of corporal punishment. We are now in the process, and the suspension of that is part of the process.
She assures that there is a transition plan that the Ministry of Education and Gender Relations will roll out.
We have established a working committee to move the process of the positive behavior management forward. And the working committee also has a mandate to decide on the various activities and when they happen towards the eventual abolition of corporal punishment. The working committee, one of the activities is really sensitization of the general public.
The working committee is in the process of sensitizing and training educators toward the goal of eventual abolishment of corporal punishment in the school system. The Director of Gender Relations, Janie Joseph, says as the ministry moved into the process of adopting a framework of child-friendly schools, it had implemented a pilot project at 2 schools, followed by a rollout in 2 schools in 2 districts per year since 2010.
Part of the Effective Schools Framework or Child-Friendly Schools initiative is positive behavior support. Positive behavior support introduces a concept of discipline at schools that is not punitive in design, but is more holistic because the positive behavior support is school-wide. It means that discipline is a shared goal among staff and students alike.
Joseph says about half of the schools on island have already incorporated the child-friendly school model into their operations, and so she says the suspension of corporal punishment had already begun. She does not believe that the transition will be a difficult one for schools. Now, the directors of Rise St. Lucia, Inc. say the Ministry of Education has its full support and blessing to press ahead with the abolishment of corporal punishment in the school system. Solange Alfred tells us more in this report.
The Ministry of Education has announced the intention to suspend, then eventually abolish corporal punishment by May 1st, 2020. Weighing in on the abolishment of corporal punishment is Director of Rise St. Lucia, Dr. Stephen King, who is of the opinion that this action is a step in the right direction for the national school system. He noted that positive reinforcement will lay the groundwork to cultivate the growth and development of young adults free of traumatic experiences, which he said may hinder the natural progression of a child.
From Rice St. Lucia, Dr. Bird, Dr. Jacqueline Bird, and myself, and all of the Rice family have been advocating for years now, and in fact we're not the only ones. From even prior to that, many other people have been advocating for the abolition of corporal punishment in our schools and indeed in our homes. But so we applaud the Ministry of Education for this move. We need to move towards we need to eliminate adverse child experiences if we want to create the kind of environment that will allow our children to grow to be the kind of confident, self-managing people that we need. And that means we have to instill a process of positive discipline in our schools and in our homes. So I think this is a wonderful move. I applaud this move. I know that there are many people who are concerned that this means that there'll be indiscipline will rise in the schools. However, that is not supposed to happen. If the schools implement the positive discipline practices which are well documented and people can be trained in that, there's no reason why we cannot have even better discipline and have a better environment for the learning for our children and the education of our children.
Criticism of the proposed abolishment of corporal punishment has already begun. Some concerned individuals argue that disciplinary problems among students will increase. However, Dr. King is of the opinion that with a level of training and development of teachers, principals, and ancillary staff of schools, what should come about is a better level of classroom management that should negate corporal punishment.
Better engagement of the children, the positive discipline practices, and in fact, I saw that GWI Open Campus over the summer is going to be running a series of courses to educate teachers on positive disciplining. Dr. Bird herself has identified resources and herself can train in positive disciplining methods. So there's no reason why we need to be careful of moving into this better place, better space, safer space for our children. We need to eliminate this cruelty and physical punishment of our children. That's counterproductive.
In a previously aired interview with co-founder of Rise St. Lucia, Dr. Jacqueline Bird, she echoed similar sentiments, stating that physical punishment has no place in an advancing school system. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Solange Alfred.
Meanwhile, members of the public are weighing in on the matter. The arguments for and against corporal punishment have been well ventilated over the years. The staunch supporters say, spare the rod and spoil the child. But those in opposition to the practice say studies show that physical violence is not the way to change or rehabilitate behavior.
Corporal punishment should be in school. My reason for saying that, the way I see the young children nowadays getting on the street after school and within school time, if they don't discipline those children in school now, those children will grow up to be worse than they are now.
If you spare the rod, you're spoiling the child. So then if you give the child a couple of lashes, if he does anything that is wrong, and he does not want to get these lashes again, then he's going to behave himself.
It doesn't affect our children. Corporal punishment should never been there. You understand? Because the way you raise your children, and you can have other people beating your children. You understand?
I think that it should stop. They should find another way to punish the children. Well, there's suspension, there's detention. Because by right, I have kids, and I would not feel good that beating somebody else's child.
Discipline, c'est pas mais pas discipline yo trop mauvais. Vous comprenez? But because you pas discipline yo, c'est pas là qui plus mauvais. So on peut discipline yo dans manière, mais sometimes un teacher qui discipline c'est pas là trop mauvais qui pas bon. So moi d'accord pour yo sa discipline maman là, moi pas.
Right now I'm not supporting punishment at school because when kids do things, they always think that they are right. So how can we straighten them up? So we have to teach them the lesson by telling them what's right.
If you're supposed to beat my child, you're supposed to call me to the school if you do something wrong. But I don't support that the teachers beating the children in school.
In my days, the teacher used to beat me from children. Now you just give them all the freedom, then you don't want to beat them. They are making no sense.
The excessive beating, I will not support. But if they're trying doing wrong or they do something wrong, the teachers in the school, the principal have a right to give them tutelage. You don't want to beat them excessively, but you can beat them.
Based on what I see, being a doctor, I don't think they should beat the children. You need to talk to them. Because the Bible says, train up the child the way the child would go. And I believe the government is doing the right thing by just talking to the children and doing the right things, not by beating them.
I vehemently oppose the abolishment of corporal punishment. I think it's a good disciplinary measure. We have to use it conscientiously, that do not abuse it. Even the Bible says to spare the rod and spoil a child. The rod of correction will drive foolishness out of the child. I myself went to seminary college and I got my fair share of cane, and it did me well. It helped me stay on the straight and narrow path.
Those were your views. You're watching the Hot 790 News. Still to come, HIA controversy heats up. The Venezuelan ambassador to St. Lucia denounces what she says are ploys by the US government and says Venezuela still has its allies. And the opposition's point person on agriculture laments the plight of fishers. That and much more when we come back.